What's going on, everybody?
Hey,
Hopefully
hey,
the
hey.
sound quality is amazing. Um, Using this new microphone right here. Look how fuzzy it is. So hopefully this is picking us up all right. Comment, let us know. I just hit start and we didn't brief about what we were going to talk about at all. But RK and I are ninjas because we Facebook Live all the time. RK, remember that one time we had a Facebook Live competition and I beat you because I did like 7. You went to bed and thought you had won because you'd done 5, and then I pulled out a couple more and beat you.
You cheated by doing like 3 lives in a Walmart. How lame is that? I was actually producing content. You were just
You know what's
videoing
funny?
Target.
Target, that video on my YouTube channel is my most viewed video.
Shopping at Target?
Yep, because it shows how expensive everything is in Hawaii.
Dude, that's, well, God bless you.
There you go. All right, so we're here with RK. RK is teaching in the DTS this week. He's teaching on evangelism, and RK is the pastor of a homeless church in Hawaii, and he feeds the homeless every Tuesday in Waikiki. He's been doing that consistently for 7 years. I think the only Tuesday you've missed is because there was a hurricane.
No, we went on the hurricane. We only missed a Tuesday because it was Christmas.
Oh, all right. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah, we're gonna chat about 2 things today. 2 things. Those 2 things are my glasses are fogging up right now, and the sun's coming up. No, those 2 things are we're gonna talk about the poor because this is something I've been thinking about. We kind of just had a Marco Polo chat yesterday about that, so I want to dig into that. And then I also want to talk about the 5 levels of discipleship, which is a concept that you've come up with that I'm excited to really dig into. But yeah, so I've been putting out a piece of content about the 11 things I've been thinking about as I turn half 70, and one of those things is the poor and needy. Speaking of birthdays and content, Gary V today dropped a birthday present because it's his birthday, and get that PDF. It's like 170 pages or something about how to churn out like 64 pieces of content a day. So that's a free PDF that you can download today if you're following Gary V. But yeah, as I'm turning half 70, what do I do about the poor and needy? That's a big question I've had. So I'm Marco Polo at RK yesterday and was like, what do I do? The early church started, fasting and giving that money to the poor, and so that's something I'm considering looking into. My buddy Wade Huffman in Clarksville, Tennessee, carries around just a roll of $5 bills with some waters and granola bars, and gives those out to people that he sees that are homeless. So, RK, what do you think? What are the tangible things that you can do for the poor and needy, and why is it important?
Man, I think one of the important things to first think about is the 4 quadrants of what poverty is. I think there's 4 different types of poverty in the Bible. So you got what most people think of as poverty, which is material poverty, right? You don't have everything that you need to be able to live, right? But then there's a spiritual poverty, there's a relational poverty, and there's a motivational poverty. And if you look at it in quadrants, you can have a lot of money and still be very poor. And so if you look at it as material, motivational, spiritual, relational, you'll see that a lot of times those who have no money are still strong when it comes to relational, and they're not poor relationally, and they're not poor spiritually. A lot of times the poor in the world are some of the most spiritually mature people on the planet, where the people who have a lot of money, a lot of times they're poor spiritually because their money is their God, or their money is their things. So I think the first thing, if divine poverty is lack, right, and you understand the 4 different quadrants, you see that those who have no money can learn from those who do have money, and those who do have material wealth can actually learn from those who have a lack of material wealth, right? Then I think you look in the Bible. Let's say, because I think what you're mainly talking about is material poverty. Like, how do you help those who are lacking, like the homeless, whatnot? In the Bible, the way you serve the poor is you didn't harvest your whole field. You left the edges of your field so the poor could come and provide for themselves. In Acts, you see the wealthy that had property, they would sell their property, and then they would serve the poor. So there is some aspect of, if you want to serve the poor, the best way you do that is by giving them work and provide or take the profit from your your work, which would be selling, and give to the poor. But again, it's giving them work. And like one of the things that they do good in Hawaii is, you can get 5 cents per can, 5 cents per bottle. But the thing is you don't get it for free. You got to go collect those things and take them to the recycle center, and then when you get to the recycle center, they'll pay you for your work, right? Which is kind of like Hawaii's version of gleaning the fields, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, you talked about Deuteronomy 14 yesterday a little bit. Yeah, just chat on that.
Well, if you look at Deuteronomy 14, talks about the purpose of the tithe, which I think is interesting, and it separates it into 3 years. And so it says collect a tenth of your, say, earnings, and it says put it aside, and then one time a year use your tithe and go and celebrate the presence of God in Jerusalem. So you take your tithe, you buy the best meat, you buy the best drinks, and you celebrate God around this feast, right? And it says if your tithe won't make it to celebrate, the feast around the temple, then sell your stuff and then take that money and then go and purchase it in Jerusalem. And then, so that's for every 2 years. 2 years you take your tithe and you celebrate with it. And then 1 year you take it and you give it, but you don't just give it only to the temple. You give it to the temple, you give it to the poor, you give it to the immigrant, right? And so I think that the tithe can be used to serve the poor. And one of the things I think would be really interesting is if you used part of your tithe to create business opportunities for the poor, to be able to continually fun work for the poor.
Yeah, what are some opportunities that you've tried and experimented with over the years with providing work for the poor?
Man, we sometimes we'll create little things around the house, like, if someone wants, we'll say, hey, you can come clean our house for $10, and we'll pay them $10 an hour to come and clean around the house. Just give them some little things like that. I have a marketing company, and we used to send a lot of direct mail. So direct mail actually gets open more. Direct mail is just you send businesses mail in the actual mailbox, that, and it actually your letters will get open more if you handwrite the envelopes. So we say, hey, I'll pay you $10 an hour. All you got to do is you got to write names and addresses on these envelopes. And so we give them 100 envelopes, and they would write names and emails on them, names and addresses. We've done that. We have a small cleaning company. We've hired people on the streets to work in our cleaning company. One time we had a lady who was a part of what we're doing, and she used to cold call for a living. And so cold calling is good for business. So I hired her to cold call businesses and get business for us. So all this stuff. They were just little experiments. Say, how can we serve the poor by giving them work?
Super good. Super good. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right?
Sometimes they steal stuff from the businesses they're cleaning, and then you have to fire them.
Yeah. So comment and let us know what you think would be some good ideas, or if you know of somebody that's providing work for the poor and how that's working out.
I have another thing to mention. There's a verse. I forget where it's at right now, but it says, "Let him who steals steal no longer, but let him do something useful with his hands that he may be able to give to others." And so I see it. You start off at a minus, like let him who steals goes to a 0, steal no longer, but let him work and do something useful with his hands, so he learns a trade, then he can give to others. And there was actually a small-time drug dealer here in Hawaii who was trying to become a big-time drug dealer, had this idea to rob another drug dealer, take all of his drugs so he could become a big-time drug dealer. His wife actually found him, and long story short, he gets his life right, has an encounter with God. He goes from being a drug dealer, drug addict, to not being a drug dealer, drug addict. Starts to learn a job and started a restaurant, but he wanted to be able to give to others. And he realized that people like him, ex-cons and ex-drug addicts and whatnot, it's kind of hard for them to find jobs. So he started to hire these guys to work in his restaurant. And then when they worked up enough, he would actually give them their own, basically, franchise. And so it was like a cool way to see, like, from minus to plus, like let him who is a drug addict be a drug addict no longer, but let them work and do something useful with their hands, learning a trade, some sort, so that they can give to others. And I think you use that for the poor drug addicts, like where you take them from a process of little by little, you give them something to do, and then release them. And I think that's kind of like what we're talking about with the 5 stages of discipleship. It's almost like the same thing.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that in a minute. What are some good resources for helping the poor? What are some just like books? Just as I've like read through the Old Testament, every time I read through the Old Testament and the New Testament, just like the poor and the needy are on God's heart, and it's just like, man, what am I doing about this in my life? So what do you feel like are some good books or resources that
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah was judged not because of their sexual immorality, but because of how they treated the poor, which is crazy if you think about it. Like, that's how much it matters to God. God will actually judge nations according to how they treat the poor, the needy, and those in prisons. That's what it says in Matthew 25. So, but some of the best resources, there's a book called Bridges Out of Poverty that is really good. So, she talks about the different mindsets of the different classes. So she has a poverty class, a middle class, and then a wealthy class. And the way each one of them think totally different. They have a different language, a different way of thinking about things. So, for example, one of the things she talks about is the way the poor deal with conflict is through violence. The way the middle class deal with conflict is through words, and the way the upper class deals with conflict is through court. So you'll see these things happen over and over and over again. For money, the poverty for the poverty class and poverty mindset, money is for fun. Middle class, money is for saving. Upper class, money is for investing. So the whole book is about these different mindsets and how to take people from a poverty mindset to a middle class mindset to a wealthy mindset. Great book, Bridges Out of Poverty. Another really good book is Muhammad Yunus, Banker to the Poor.
What was that, banking?
Banker to the Poor. He started doing microloans for like the super poor. Like he saw these. I believe it's in Pakistan. No, maybe not Pakistan. Bangladesh. I think he's actually in Bangladesh. He would see these super poor. They were I think chipping rocks. I can't remember what they were doing, but these are like basically slave labor, and they get these loans from these bosses that they can never pay off. So their whole life they're just chipping away rocks. And he asked one of them, "How much do you owe the guy?" And it was $30. So they would be enslaved for the rest of their life because of a $30 loan. So he took out $30 and said, "Here, be free." And it went now to where they give microloans to the poor, and it's a cool concept because they give microloans according to a business plan that you set up. So again, like if you think about the way to help the poor is through business. So you would, let's say you were poor, you wanted to get out of poverty, you came up with a business idea. You would actually come in with a group of about half a dozen people, and you would come up with the business plan, and the other 5 people with you would critique your business plan. And once it was good, solid, something that you could actually do, then they would give you a microloan to start your business, and then you'd go and do your business plan. In India, I have a friend, Steve Stewart, works with Impact Nations. They do sewing school for poor widows, and at the end of the sewing school, you're given a sewing machine so you can start your sewing business. But it's not a giveaway. It's a loan that you pay back from the stuff that you sell through your sewing, so that the next lady who goes through the sewing school can also get a sewing machine. So kind of it's kind of like pay it forward concept with teaching them business and skills. And
that's awesome. I remember we did a second episode on doing ministry well together that I never released, and I remember something specific that you said in there that I want to hit on right now about the poor and needy as well. You said probably down in Waikiki there's about 4 classes of people. There's mentally ill, you've got people that are addicted to either drugs or alcohol, you've got people that are literally just down on their luck and are just temporarily homeless but are actually looking for work, and then you said the 4th category is
beach bums.
Yeah, people that are just lazy and don't want to work and don't care and like
just
that.
Want to go to the beach and gonna surf and live on the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said that you'd say the people that you interact with, that's about a quarter, right? Quarter each of those categories. So yeah, that's super interesting. All right, we're gonna end this. I'm gonna check how the sound quality is. Thanks for checking in. We're gonna talk about the 5 levels of discipleship next. I'm really excited about this because In this past week, I've heard two different people say that they're considering leaving our church, and so just for different reasons. And so I'm excited to talk about the 5 levels of discipleship, which are, let's just name them, and then we'll get into them in the next video.
So you go from infant to child to young adult to parent to grandparent.
There you go. All right, so I'm gonna start another one, check back in, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.